Now let's get on with painting the details. So now I'll be using two different brushes. One is a flat brush which is slightly smaller than what I used earlier. This is the one which I used earlier. So this one is a slightly smaller brush, and this one is a rigger which I will use to add few details which can be done only with a pointed brush. So now I need to first let me decide which area I need to add details first. So either I can do that for the rocks or the sea, but since the sea colors are pretty much drier than what the rock colors are, I'll start with the water first or the sea first. So let me get some fresh white out, and I have to paint the surf. So I will start with, there is some blue here, and I don't know if I need to get rid of that, but I can live with that because anyway the sea has some blue in it. So I'll start with this pure white. You can see that here, and I'll start painting the surf. So I'll start with rather this corner or this side and start adding the details of these waves. So I'll start with the big ones first. So there'll be light here or the waves here, and I'm using this color very much dry so that I get that broken color effect instead of using smooth paste like color. I just want to create an impression. I don't want to paint each and every wave in a precise manner. You can add some water to this if you need, if you see that the brush doesn't move properly. I don't want this surf or this wave large enough, so I'll cover it up the with this with the beach color and use this was the beach color. Here it is. I'll just apply it over that, and get rid of that wave. I'll paint a smaller wave there in some time. So I can add waves at the base of these mountains or rocks. And here and this wave will continue even here. So it's actually behind the rock, so that continuity will be seen. I'm trying to avoid making the scene too busy, and also I'm looking at and trying to make these distances not the same, so that it doesn't look artificially painted, or it looks much more natural rather. This wave continues here. And this wave is like this, it goes like this, and a smaller wave here. I think that should be good enough. Let me add a few blue color patches. So some blue, and get rid of some of this white. Make the wave slightly smaller in size, even here. And the white of the waves here will be slightly more bluish than the white here because of the distance. So I'm just dragging this light blue colored brush over these waves here. So they look white, but they're not as bright as this. And I had to adjust this line here. I'll start with, I can reactivate this color here of the distant waves. Oh, sorry, distant water. And let me make this into a straight line. It's a mistake which you should avoid all the time, and make the horizon perfectly horizontal. It makes your painting much more professional looking and much more realistic. I think I need to break the blue of this slightly, a white of this slightly, and also somewhere here. I'm trying to reduce the variation. I think that's fine. Yeah. Now let me come to the rocks. To the rocks, I will add first the darks and later add the lights. So for the rocks, the darks, I will modify this color which I have applied here as the first base coat. I'll modify this with more of blue and more of brown so that it becomes darker. And let's test this. I can make it slightly more brownish. So adding more burnt sienna to it. And I don't want this color to be too thick. And I'll apply it on the dark side. Looks good, I guess. And now I'll carve out the dark side. And at some places there are these horizontal marks because of the sedimentation. I will add those later. Or I can start adding them right now also. and you can see that the rock is dark here and it becomes lighter and lighter. You can see that the rock has now started looking three-dimensional. I'm using the brush now like a in dry brush technique, because that creates those horizontal lines pretty easily. I'll paint the highlights later on. I'll paint these darks on these rocks now. So this one I will use my artistic license and paint, decide where the lights will be and where the darks will be. This rock has a lot of dark on this side. And there is this line here, and you can see there are some areas of shadows like this, which are formed because of the structure of the rock. I'm just trying to avoid making them uniform. And the rock behind that is almost in shadow, almost completely in shadow. So paint it like this. There is a slight sliver of light here, and in this mountain is also dark. And this one is slightly darker than the next one, but I'll make that dark by painting it again once it is dry. I'll not change the color. And I'm leaving some of these vertical marks intentionally. That will make them more realistic by texture. There is some problem here. This need not be dark, but I'll adjust that when I paint the highlights. So now let me mix a highlight color. Highlight color is, I can start modifying this color, this one, and I'll add a lot of yellow ochre, and it needs to be opaque, and some brown to make it reddish. And let's test this color. And let's test this in a small rock. Yeah, looks nice. Something like this. Now let's paint this. Use the brush horizontally like this to create those and leave some gaps in between. can paint like this also. Now I'm not much looking at the photograph. I'm trying to paint what makes sense here. And there is this kind of a ridge where more of light is falling, and I think that's enough. I should add some lights here with a thin color, but before that let me add lights to this. The lights on this will be slightly dull, so I will take some of this color, which I am currently using, and mix it here, which already has this light dark color in it, so it becomes slightly dull. Then I can use it here. Yeah. And a sliver of light here, and maybe here, just to add some detail. I think that's enough for now. And let's zoom back out. And now let me take my rigger brush, and I need to add some lights here somewhere in some places. So for that, what I'll do is I'll make this color slightly thin, so that it's a mixture of the dark and the light, and it's also thin, so it will not become opaque. And I'll add it at using this brush horizontally and not painting it as a with a point. So something like this. And here I'm doing it randomly. It will create its own. So it doesn't look like it's a dead black side of the mountain or the rock. There is some reflected light here and there. Yeah, that looks nice. So this is how the rock looks now. So you can see some reflected light here. It's not very dark. And I can add some darks now to make this the focal point. For the dark, I will mix this blue and brown, and because I am painting a color on the surface third time, it will become dark anyway, and I also want the color to be dark. So you can see this color is much more darker than what we mixed earlier. And now let me add these dark accents at some places. And this is also dark. This is slightly more bluish, so I'll make it more brownish by adding more brown. Yeah. And I'll drag it I can also use my finger to merge it. You can see now it's not, doesn't look like a cutout. There is transition, and I feel I think I can add a small rock here. Just because I feel like adding it. I'll add the light later on, and I'll drag this color here just to create these lines. I need that color to be slightly thin so that I can make the mark. Don't overdo this. But these do add some more realism to the painting. Now let me add the highlight color on this. Small remnant so that it doesn't look a patch of, just some color. And I can add that dark even on the rock here. So as you can see, there are three grades or three types of colors, three values. One is the darkest dark, which I am applying right now, and another is the mid tone, which I applied first, and the highlights which I applied in between. So that creates that impression of dimensionality, which is very necessary for painting rocks. Now let me take a quick look at what's, if I need to paint slightly greenish color on top of this, I think I need to do that so that it looks like there is some moss growing on there. Mixing yellow ochre and blue. It's not bright green, but it's greenish, moss green. And I'll touch that green here also. Let's see now. Let me zoom out. You can see the light here, that's because of the reflection, but this is how it looks. I think I need to change the shadow portion on the big rock a bit. Yeah, this looks better. It's not exactly as the photo, but this looks more of it. and some tinge of yellow ochre here. That's like too much of attention to detail. I think I can stop here. Let me see if anything is remaining, or I can make the border and call it finished. Yeah, I have to make these rocks slightly darker, and for that I will use the large brush, because you can see that in photo this is much more darker. So I'll modify this color itself. I'll add some more blue, some more brown, and let's paint this. This time I'll paint it with horizontal brush strokes. Yeah, this looks good. And I'll also not paint it like paint it with few brush strokes and maintain the texture. I don't want to cover up everything what the earlier layer has done. And also paint this layer, this mountain slightly. I want it to be slightly lighter, but I can run the brush once or twice. Yes, I think that's enough. And just border or draw this border with pencil, and then we would be done. I hope you enjoyed painting this limestone stacks on the Australian border. This will give you an idea of how to paint any rock. Paint the edges or draw the edges also with straight lines. Don't make them organic smooth curves. That increases their rockiness, if that's a word. And that's it. Again, the paint is not yet completely dry, that's why you see the reflection here. Now you should not see it. I hope you liked this demo or painting process. Let me reduce the size of the photo and zoom in here so that you can see this more clearly. So that's how you would paint. You should paint the rocks on the seashore. And as you noticed, we eliminated few rocks. I didn't want to paint all the rocks. I just chose the ones which make an interesting composition and painted those. So you can always do that. You can use your artistic license and paint only those things which make your painting interesting, and eliminate all those which are not so much required. So that's it. Now it's your turn to bring out your colors and paint a version of this and post it so that we can see it. Thank you and see you next time. Happy painting.